तू चलता चल तू चलता चल तू चलता चल.
Well, today we have with us Palaash Mankodi. He's just 21 year old. He has done his BBA from Flame University in Mumbai. This attempt, he has not specified. This has been a non-technical SSC entry, short service. Which attempt was this? Yours?
This was my first attempt at SSB.
Acha, first attempt. Okay. First attempt, it will be a big motivation for those who are going for the SSB for the first time. Please start with your motivation. How did the inspiration come to you to join the defense services, and what had happened earlier before attempting?
Ma'am, so in my childhood, my grandmother had brought some miniature army figures for me as toys. So I used to set them up in a way in my hall and just stare at them for hours at length. So that was my initial motivator that really intrigued me about what army was. But consciously in my 10th standard, when I had to choose my stream for my 11th and 12th, one of my friends told me that he wants to become a fighter pilot, and that's when it actually struck me that the armed forces could also be a profession. So that's when I put my liking and into an actual organized manner that I could also take it up as a career. So that's how it started for me.
And how was that organized manner? What was that organized manner? Because people lack in organization ability, right from the starting of the day, the routine management, managing career, plus in let's say in your case, studies. So how did it all got managed?
In the beginning, it was very difficult for me as well. How I started was I started doing my own research about what exactly the army is. It's not exactly what they show in the films, etc. So I wanted to know more about what life is like. So that's how I started in my 10th, 11th, and 12th standard. I started researching more, and side by side, I kept participating in my extracurriculars and school academics. However, as you mentioned, ma'am, even my focus was not up to the mark at that time. I needed more effort, which I was not able to put in. So that's how I was not able to clear my NDA written examination. I did not put in the required effort I needed for math. And thereon, I decided to pursue my graduation in BBA in communications because that was the other field which I had my interests in. So I kept focusing on the academic subjects as they were taught in college. The pandemic also hit, but it was fairly good to be accustomed to the online mode of education. And side by side, I pursued my sport of mixed martial arts. That's my primary sport. So I kept competing in that as well because that helped me have some focus in life to be working in a disciplined manner. And I had my first CDS written examination in November 2021. And I had my best friend along with me who was also preparing for that exam. And this time we both just fell from within, and that we have to be disciplined this time. We cannot take this in a light manner the way we did for NDA. And that person really helped me, get my head straight and put my head down and work towards the written examination. Because for me personally, I always felt that the written examination was a bigger barrier than any SSB because that was my weakness. So I divided my strong subjects for the written examination, which I felt I could bulletproof, and I studied them methodically because for me, science, polity, and English were my strong points. So I focused on these, and I aimed to clear the cutoff, which I did in my first attempt for the CDS examination. And thereon, I waited for my SSB. I immediately enrolled for NFA because I realized that I do not want to waste any time this time. I want to get in the academy in my first attempt. So I had my first call about 5 days after my written examination because I knew that I would clear the written examination. So I spoke to Colonel Nehru after that, and he gave me some sort of a roadmap after having my personal interview with me. So he told me that I need to work on a couple of things. One being general awareness. the other being confidence, and organizing my day-to-day life. Now, confidence, I believe I worked on through participating in extracurriculars in college, which involved public speaking and participating in event organization, etc., where I was involved with talking to people. For general awareness, my studies for my written examination, as well as I picked up on the habit of watching Vion News, the Gravitas channel. So I started watching that. So that helped me build my general awareness. And for as far as organizing my day-to-day life was concerned, it was a challenge because I used to live in a hostel, and with all my friends enjoying and me trying to live a organized life, it was two complete ends of a different spectrum. So that took the most effort for me personally. But as college came to a closure in May 2022, and me coming back home, I took up some small internships, and I started following a timetable, which really helped me personally, simulating that of an SSB, like waking up at good hours, 6 a.m., and then following a routine lifestyle, which went for about 2 months till my SSB. So that small changes basically helped me take the next step forward.
Okay, that's great. So, can you tell us in brief, just a small brief about that routine life which helped you? The 2 months which you did, it did take a lot of efforts. Hmm.
Sure. So it went about with me waking up early in the morning at about 6 a.m. Then I used to go for my morning run, some form of cardio. I used to come back, make myself some breakfast, then go on for personal training. I used to help my friends and a couple of people with that. And then I used to come back, lunch. Then that the afternoon period till evening was my time for self growth. Like basically, I used to work on general awareness videos. I used to either practice my OIR or basically something related to my goal in for my SSB. Evenings would be either practicing my sport of mixed martial arts. I had my training, or I would engage in some form of strength and conditioning for me. And after that, after dinner in the evening, it was again a round of revision for my knowledge building, basically. So that's how my day went, and I tried keeping a cutoff from digital media as far as I possibly can because I felt that was leading to a lot of time wasted for me.
And it's difficult to keep the social media away. So thank you for pointing out that you had the self-control. Now coming to the SSBs, please start off with the day of reporting. And I guess CDS entry means there will be huge numbers. Then screening process. Start off with the screening process, please.
So my in Bangalore, and we had to report on 25th. There were 116 people who got reported on the first day, and our screening in process was in four parts: the OIR, the picture perception test, the narration test, and the discussion test. So let me begin with the OIR. We had multiple OIRs given to us, and they were mainly in a jumbled format: pattern recognition, cubes, dice, some numerical ability questions, etc. So, but that was fairly easy. I followed some books before going to the SSB to practice my OIR, which are easily available on the internet and are shared on most of our NFA groups. So basically, I used that material to help me practice the speed with which I solved the OIR. And I'd like to say, in my personal experience, OIR was very helpful in my screening and process, and I think nobody should neglect that. So, like, I focused well on OIR. After that, the picture perception comes in. We were shown a picture of what I perceived as a family, four people, two parents and two children. And I wrote a brief story about how it was a reunion, a get together of sorts after the son had graduated from a renowned college and went on to secure a good package with an NLC. So that was how my story revolved. We submitted that, and there was a fairly long wait before our group discussion and narration started. So after about 45 minutes we were called in groups of 20. I think they were divided into groups based on freshers, screened out, and repeaters. I believe my group consisted of freshers and screened out candidates. So we were 20 of us, and we were called in the discussion room. And one by one, we were asked to narrate our individual narrations. And thereon, we went on to a group discussion. It began as the stereotype is it was a fish market. Everybody started talking at once. I kept calm. I just did my hand gest. Even if I asked them to keep calm, nobody would listen. So I just indicated with my hand gestures for people to try and keep calm and talk one by one. But that was of no avail. The interviewing panel, the people who were interviewing us there, they only divided us into two groups around, and I was in the second group. So the first group discussed the story at length up to about halfway, where they also summed it up as a reunion. And then my group started discussing right from the beginning. So I suggested them to take the story forward from where the first group had stopped it. And they thankfully listened, and that helped us take the story forward in a much quicker manner. So that helped us a lot. And we, as a group of 20, did finally come to a consensus. And I was nominated later to give the final narration. So I summed up the entire consensus of the group and presented it. So that's how my screening in went. Afterwards, after all the groups were done with their discussion and narration, we were 29 of us who were screened in. And yeah, summing it up, that was the screening in first.
Okay, thank you so much. And then psych test. How was your psychology test?
So the second day we had our psychology test, and everybody on the first night was telling me to practice my self-description and ratta marne ka basically they were asking me to do, but I didn't feel the need to because self-description was an honest reflection. So while everybody was preparing for that, I was just getting to know all my friends who were also screened in with me. The second day began with the psych officer briefing us about the psychology test. I would suggest, yeah, one more thing which I would like to add in the screening and psychology is to listen to the instructions well, because in my PPDT, the officer clearly mentioned to mark the characters with an X. But a lot, I don't know if it was a result of coaching or if it was a result of previous practice. Everybody circled the main character, but this was nowhere asked by the officer to do that. And I didn't do that. So I was also wondering in my head if I went wrong or if they went wrong. So, but thankfully, I think I was screened in.
This does happen, not just screening. This happens in even GDs, GPs. That at that point of time, adopt some different instruction comes, which are not actually registered in our minds. And then those who note down that instruction may get a plus point. Yes,
Right.
go ahead.
So that's what I wanted to bring out. Like, don't come in with preconceived notions. Just listen to the instructions well. So even in our psychology tests, a lot of detailed instructions were given about all four tests that were administered. So we began with the TAT test. We were shown 11 pictures, and the last one was a blank slide. Uh, on a general note, I believe all the pictures are fairly clear and easy to perceive. I wrote nothing extraordinary. I wrote common stories which came to my mind. And in the typical sense, I didn't find any negative picture that was shown, except for one where a person was lying down. And on the top right corner of the image, there was a person with his fist closed. But that I wrote a story about how there was an overworking condition in a hotel management institute for a chef, and it was also a fairly easy story to write about for all of us. So TAT went fairly well for most of us. Then came in the WAT test. I believe there were 50 words we had to write about, and we were given roughly 10 seconds when the word was flashed in front of us. I believe that was the toughest test for me. My real thoughts were getting reflected because I didn't have any time to think about anything. But as discussed with sir, I didn't focus a lot on making fancy sentences, but I just used the word in a sentence well. And in that, I don't know if I went wrong in one word. There was a word called Thames, which I did not know the meaning about. So I just went on to write Thames is a difficult word to write about. And everybody else in the break started discussing what Thames is, and it meant something completely different. It's a lady version of a knight. So that one word was very tricky for me.
Name is actually a lady, huh?
But I personally
Lady
didn't know.
tail wala.
Yeah.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
So that was a bit of a tricky one for me. Other than that, I completed all of my WATs, but it was the most challenging time-wise for me. Then came the situation reaction test. Again, I completed all 60 with queries. Nothing too difficult. It was a common format. What I noticed was there were quite a lot of repeating themes. Like there was one theme where a snake was involved, which got repeated 3 to 4 times. So I believe they are looking for consistency in your answers, or are you trying to make it becoming a hero or not? So just be honest with yourself and write what you would really do in a logical sense. Is my advice. So that's how the SRTs went for me. And then was the self description. Everybody was thorough with that because they were practicing the previous night. And even myself, we were given 5 themes to write about your perception about yourself, what you would like to be in the future, your parents, your friends, and your teachers or your employers. And that's something I discussed with Col Nehru before. So I had a fair idea about what my perceptions were about all 5 fields. So that wasn't a challenge either. So that went fairly well. So that was my psychology.
That's great. It was good to listen to the naturalness with which you came out in psychology. Okay. Please tell us the next GTO task, right from GDs, then GP. Yes.
Ma'am, so my personal interview was on the second day.
Okay, then start with the personal interview.
Yes, ma'am. So right after psych was called up, was finished, we were called up to for our personal interviews, and I was not prepared for my personal interview that day because I had a particular set of formals which I wanted to wear for my personal interview, but it all began in a very quick fashion. So I just borrowed a tie from my fellow friend. I wore it and I left for my personal interview. Personal interview was very similar to what Nehru sir takes. The first 40, he was a very welcoming officer. The first few minutes were to get us into place, calm us down, and then he began with the PIQ questions. We had to write a form on the first day when we were screened in based on our individual information, educational information, work experience about our parents, etc., etc. So most of the questions started coming in that manner. And what typically they call rapid fire questions, I believe those were asked, but they weren't really asked in a rapid fire way. He just asked me questions in 3 blocks. First, he mentioned to tell me everything about what I've done since 10th standard in terms of education, family, extracurricular, sports, hobbies, interests, etc. And he just asked me that to me in a flow. But I personally didn't put a lot of effort in remembering the flow, more so the information which I want to tell him. And it came out quite in a logical manner because that's what I've done in life since 10th standard. So that wasn't much of a tricky part. So I just focused on telling him whatever I know about myself rather than focusing on the flow he asked me the questions in. So that was the first block of questions about my personal life and educational life since 10th. Then he asked me about my interactions with my family. What are some of the taboo topics? What I discussed with my family. He wanted to know more about my relationship with my family. Then he went on to ask me about my relationship with my friends. And he told me to name 5 friends, one thing everyone dislikes about me, and all of that. And then he picked on one friend and he started discussing my relationship with that particular friend. Then the interviewer asked me about my sport. And this was one thing which was kind of tricky for me to ask, but it came out naturally again. He asked me about my sport of mixed martial arts, which I'm passionate about since 11th standard, and he asked me why I don't want to make a career in it. So, which I mentioned that one, there is not a lot of opportunities, and there is always a risk of injury in training. And I would personally would not want to make that hobby as my profession. And To that, he counter questioned me that there is also a lot of risk of injury in training for the army. So why would you choose army? My answer for that was that if I uh, fail in my mixed martial arts training, I wouldn't be able to compete, which is the actual work of a mixed martial artist, to compete in the ring. Whereas the army trains you in the officers training academy as well as and all the other academies as well as in the armed forces once you get commissioned, and both of which are my goals. So, God forbid if I happen to face an injury in my academy, I would take it with a good heart because that was my goal in the first place. Whereas mixed martial arts training isn't my goal, competing was. So there are two different spectrums to look at. So I believe the interviewer was satisfied with that answer, and that's something which I faced was tricky in my interview. So this PIQ based interview went on for about 40 to 45 minutes roughly, and then he asked me GK questions based on Indian defense. He asked me about name five missiles, where they come from, which arm would you like to join, and tell me about that arm, and such follow-up questions, basic questions, nothing too in detail. Then after some time, he grilled me on my GK. That went on for about 15 to 20 minutes, and that was not the best part about my interview. I believed that I had improved since my interaction with Colonel Nehru, which I did, but I also realized that I still have some gap to cover in my general awareness. He focused a lot on geography, which was my weakest point, and I don't know how he figured that out, but he grilled me a lot on that rivers and the Indian geography, and in fact, geography of the Asian region. And that was a lot of grilling. Rest, he asked me about the current ongoing affairs in the international arena and the national arena, which thanks to the Vion News, I was able to cover well. And yeah, so GK went on for quite some time, and like it went on for the rest of my fellow Indian candidates. And in the end, he mentioned a dialogue saying, Bhugol is geography. So in the end, he taunted me with the dialogue saying, Tumhara Bhugol nahi goal hai. To which we both shared a laugh. And then he said, prepare whatever you didn't know well for the conference. And he asked me to make my way out. So that's how my personal interview went.
Okay. So did you search for the answers later? Because to
Yes,
somehow figure out where we lack.
100%, ma'am. I was in the library making notes, not to leave any stone unturned for the conference.
Okay. Okay. Next, GTO task.
GTO tasks were very fun. I would like all my fellow NFA mates to experience SLP once just to take part in the GTO. I felt it was like a group building exercise. Uh, it started off with two GDs for us. One was on the Agnipath scheme, and the other one was what is the biggest nuisance for the youth, internet, drugs, or others. And these weren't as much of a fish market as it was in the screening in stage. Everybody got a fair chance to share their views. And it was a healthy discussion overall. Everybody mentioned their point. After this, we had our GP group planning exercise, to which it was similar to what we have practiced. We wrote our individual plans, we submitted that, and then we came to a consensus. In this, I made a mistake because of the sun's reflection. I could not see one particular city which was just 5 kilometers away. And I sent an injured person to a village where the medical facilities would not be up to the mark, whereas everybody else escorted him to that city which was only 5 kilometers away. So that was one error on my part. Uh, but uh, but I came to a consensus with the group because I admitted it was my mistake. And in the final plan which we discussed, we all of us decided to send the injured person to that city because definitely it's only 5 kilometers away and the medical facilities would be good. Other than that, I think it was a fairly good discussion on in the and everybody gave in good points. After that, we began with our progressive group task. It was something completely new for me to even understand what a plank is, what a pulley is, and what a rope is. So in the progressive group task, I was on the back end. I was just observing how people are working. Everybody was very enthusiastic to participate. people were taking the lead, giving their ideas. So there are four parts to the progressive group task. It kept getting tougher. For the first two obstacles, I was completely an observer. I did not pitch in any good ideas, anything that made a big difference. I was observing how the working is happening. And then with the third and fourth task, I started getting used to it. I also started being a part of the group. I gave some ideas, I listened to some ideas, and we started working well. And we cleared all the four with fair easiness. Like it was a smooth sailing for us. Then came on the half group task because we were nine of us in our group, GTO group. So I believe the GTO wanted to focus on individual performance as well. So we divided us into groups of four and five, and I was in the group of four. And in that, I had a lot more participation to give in. Again, the task was of similar manner, using the equipment and carrying the weight across. But it was instead of four different obstacles, it was one obstacle which we had to cross. And this also went on with the race. We worked as a team and we crossed. After this, we had our group race, snake race as they call it. This was the highlight of my
So
SSB.
just a query for those who wish to ask this doubt, especially the first timers or those who have seen those tasks for the first time. What advice will you give to them?
For the PGT,
PGT, HGT.
just use your logic in the moment. Like, don't go in with preconceived notions about some videos which you have watched on YouTube, etc. Of course, watch them and go. They'll give you a better idea of what happens. But be in the moment, be participative, be alert. Because sometimes a traditional method of crossing the obstacle may not work, but at that moment some idea may click to you. So and try using all your resources. If the entire group is focused on using the plank to cross, and you feel the pole would be better to cross, try suggesting that. And unless you try, it won't work. So try, fail. It's okay. The GTO is not there to judge you for failing. That's my opinion. I think the more you try, the more you'll succeed. Because in my command task also, the first few times it was trial and error, but then it went on to succeed eventually. So don't be afraid of trying and participating in the group activity. Just be yourself over there.
Okay, that's good. Next, snake race that you were talking about.
This was the highlight of my SSG. I enjoyed this the most. We really worked as a team, and it gave me what camaraderie must feel like in the army. We had to choose our own war cry. For us, it was Bajrang Bali ki jai. And the rules are that all of us have to hold the snake when you are not crossing a particular obstacle, and while you are crossing it, three people have to hold it at once. So amongst the group, we made our own little strategies on how to win the race between the other two teams. And our GTO was also very motivating. He gave us a pep talk before the race. And I think this was where the teamwork showed in. Everybody helped each other cross all obstacles. Some people who were not able to climb the wall, the others were there to push them from behind, make platforms for them to step on. And it was a great environment. And I don't think any particular team won the race, but it was lovely for everybody to be at their highest moment. So, and I'd suggest to keep basic food fitness level before going for SSB because they're not completely easy. You need some basic level of fitness required to, excel in the individual and group obstacles. So just keep working out regularly, keep your fitness routine maintained. That would definitely be a plus point. So that was the group race. And in the end, the last GTO day one was the lecture. My topics, I do not remember all, but I spoke on drugs in Bollywood. I believe that's considered one of the easier topics, but I spoke fluently and confidently for 3 minutes entirely, and I wrapped it up well. So no such highlights for this, but I think most of my group members spoke fairly well for 3 minutes in the lecture. So that was GTO day one. GTO day two involved of the individual obstacle first, the command task, and the full group task. So I'll begin with the individual obstacle. Again, as I mentioned, keep basic fitness levels and strategize your route. So obstacles are numbered, and those are the points associated to that particular obstacle. So in case it's a rainy day, which for us it was fairly so. Try to do the slippery ones in the end. Try to do the ones which you'll score more in the beginning. So just strategize, and you'll be given 3 minutes. Try completing all in 3 minutes, and then go on to repeat the ones which have more points. So in this, I do not have any such highlights again. I completed 9 because I kept slipping on the zigzag balancing beam. I may have completed it. I don't know. Right when I completed it, the buzzer went. So I think I completed only 9, but not sure about that.
But there was a fair idea that you strategized how to go about it, keeping the numbers in mind.
Right. I started on with the one which had the most points, the leap. You climb up a platform, you jump onto a rope and slither down. So I think that had the most number of points, and I made my circuit revolving around that. So that's what my individual obstacle was. We went on to the command task. I was called by one person as a subordinate, and then I was test number 3, so I was the third one to go for my command task. And the GTO briefed me, had a small conversation, light-hearted conversation, asked me about why I want to join the army, etc., etc. And then he told me my task. It was a basic start line, finish line task, and I chose my 2 subordinates. I chose them. One I chose, he was well built physically and he was tall. So in case I need to cross any obstacles that are far apart, he may be able to help. And the other one had a very good analytical mind, which I observed in the 5 days. So I called him that's why, because he would be able to help me out in case I get stuck in any obstacle. And here one thing happened that most of the people who were in the commandas were the leaders who were the only ones giving ideas. But in the beginning, before beginning, I was briefing my subordinates where I mentioned this, that at any point I would be giving the ideas, but at any point you feel you have a better idea, please raise your hand, discuss it with me. If I feel that it is a better idea to implement, I will take that into consideration. Do not hesitate. So this, the GTO was surprised and he started cross-questioning me. Whose command task is this? Is this yours or theirs? Why will they be giving the ideas? Uh, I did not know if I was in the wrong or not, but I just gave an answer that as a leader, my objective is to get all 3 of us across, be it my idea or their idea. And so I really have no shame in giving their idea a chance if it means that we are crossing the obstacle. So I do not know if I did the right thing or the wrong thing, but that's how my command task went. It got completed within 5 minutes. It was fairly easy, and both of them really helped me cross it. So that's how my command task went. And then there was the full group task, again, the final task of the TTO. Fairly easy again, and everybody was up in spirit because it was the last time we'd be working as a group. Everybody pitched in their ideas. It was the first time we saw that nobody was actually trying to dominate one another. Everybody was genuinely working as a group in the task. So we completed it within 2 minutes. So that was a highlight for us. And that's how our GTO ended.
Yes, the objective of completing the task is more important. That's what you held on to. So it was good. Okay. Last, anything else that is remaining apart from conference before moving on to conference? Anywhere if you have missed something in your SSB experience?
No, ma'am. This was about it. Wrapping it up for the first 4 days.
Okay, then let us talk about conference. How was your conference?
Before going, I read a lot about fun conference stories on websites like Quora, and mine was typically like, I believe conference fairly goes on. What I believed was conference fairly goes on for 1 or 2 minutes, but mine was a thorough grilling for 20 to 30 minutes. And the system, so in my SSB was that on the first buzzer, it means that your profile is being discussed by the conference panel, and when the second buzzer rings, you walk in. So the time between the first and the second buzzer for the candidates before me was fairly 32 seconds to 1 minute. For me, it was about 5 to 10 minutes. So, and then I was called in. And as soon as I sat, the grilling started coming in from the panel there. They asked me where I was from. They asked me, so I'm from Mumbai. They asked me 3 things that were going on in Mumbai. I answered that. Then they asked me about the Eknath Shinde thing that was going on around at that time. They asked me that I was Aditya Thackeray. What would I suggest to my father, the chief minister? Uh, I mentioned that they emphasized on the word unique. So I started giving unique suggestions, and that went on for quite some time. Then they asked me what's the most adventurous thing I've done in my life. I mentioned about the military camp that I've done with military school and what I liked in that the most.
I think we have lost you for a minute. We had lost you for a minute. Can you repeat whatever that you said?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
One minute. 1 minute ago. 1 minute ago, we had lost you for a minute. Huh.
So, should I begin right from my conference?
From your conference.
Right. So, I was called in, and as soon as I sat, the grilling started coming in. They asked me where I was from, and they asked me that, okay, the Eknath Shinde controversy that was going on. They asked me that I am Aditya Thackeray. What advice would I give to my father? Tell five
Okay.
units. So that kept going on. They kept digging in more and more. And they moved on to the next one. They mentioned about what's the most adventurous thing you've done in your life. So I mentioned about the military camp that I'd gone for at Putna Military School for 1 month. I mentioned about that. They asked me what I liked the most. There, they said horse. I said horse riding. Then they created a situation where me and my ustad had gone off to a trail in a forest, and my horse got injured. What would I do? And then they kept building the situation so and so that it resulted in a point where I was back at the Bhosla Military School. Both my horses and my ustad was still stuck in the forest. There was no other means to go back to the forest 20 kilometers away other than foot. And the veterinary doctor gave me a 50-kilo box of medicine and asked me to take it back. So the president asked me what would I do in this case. I said I'd create a platform with wheels or something. I'd borrow that and drag it. He said, okay, but I'll give you 10 seconds. If not, please move to give a better answer. At that moment, it struck me that the box was of 50 kgs, not the medicine. So I said, I'll just open the box, take the important medicines, and make my way on foot. So that was the highlight of my conference. After that, he asked me that there was a paperweight in front of me. He asked me to tell five military uses of the paperweight other than being a paperweight. So this for me took time. And he was very motivating. The president. He gave me time. He said, take 30 seconds. Take 30 seconds. Think of more ideas. And that really helped me. He calmed me down. So it was a motivator for me. I gave five ideas. For example, I told him that I could use it as a block marker on a map when giving instructions to my Jawans, or I could use it as a reflecting device because it was a shiny paperweight. I could use it as a way of measuring weight because if this is 3 kilos, the other thing would be roughly 3 kilos, something like that. So I started giving him ideas like that, and then the grilling stopped, and then he asked me the routine questions, which I think are routine since it was my first time. He asked me about how my stay was, how the food was, two things that I would like to improve on in my next SSB if that happens. To which I answered my individual obstacles because I wasn't able to complete the last one, and my general awareness for my personal interview. These two things I mentioned, and yeah, that was the end of my conference.
Next, how NFA 25 activities help you because you are group coordinators of NFA 25 as well.
So in January 2022, I started my role as the coordinator. And being a fresher, I had zero idea about what PPDT looks like, what lecturate looks like, what GPE looks like. GPE being the completely unknown for me. And a lot of my friends from NFA 25 guided me through the process. Even though I was the coordinator, it was them who were guiding me. And that was a very helpful step for me to realize what SSB exactly is like. And had I not been so participative in NFA 25, probably the result wouldn't have been this because I would be completely in the unknown for the screening in part, the lecturate part, and the GPE part. So, and especially with regards to GPE, there was a certain format which many of my friends at NFA 25 used to write down their stories in a tabular format, which really was time saving. And you could write it in a detailed manner in a short amount of time. So that was also a very big plus point for me. And just interactions with them, it was quite relieving and motivating that everybody is in the same journey as me. And lecturers were quite informative. Just listening to them speak for 3 minutes on a particular topic gave a lot of information. As I mentioned, that in my first interaction with Colonel Nehru, I was weak in my general awareness and I had to improve on that. Just listening to them was quite a lot of knowledge that I was taking in on a weekly basis. So NFA 25 helped me a lot in these regards.
Okay, thank you so much. I would now like Colonel Nehru to enter. Sir, Nehru, sir.
Yeah, Palaash, congratulations. You have done yourself and all of us proud, and your group also proud. So, congratulations. And very nice. You have improved over a period of time. When I first spoke to you, you have kept your wits about you. You have worked systematically, and that is why good results have come. So, one thing you raised was a question that in the command task, you told your subordinates that in case you have better ideas, please do not hesitate. Give it to me and let us do it. This is something, please don't leave it till you become the chief of the army. This is an excellent attitude to have. I have myself followed this attitude. And I have learned as a colonel things from Naiks, Lance Naiks, Havaldars. Forget about JCOs. Because in a particular situation, somebody may have a good idea. I mean, you can't just because you're the senior most, you don't have the sole preserve of ideas, you know. It's very simple. I mean, it's a simple logic. So what you did was absolutely correct.
Right, sir.
So what is happening is why the GTOs are putting pressure on you is because they want their job to be easy. You know, he is trying to assess you in your command task, in your practical thinking. तो वो कहता है तुम इनसे सलाह वाला ना लो, अपना दिमाग लगाओ. And this is a mindset which generally people have. And in any case, Indian society is so very insecure कि हम दूसरों का आइडिया लेने से तो हमारी जान निकलती है. So that is the problem of insecurity. So you displayed that you are not insecure, you are a good team member, and that it eases your task and it reduces your pressure also. Right. To think, because we are thinking as a team, not I alone.
Right, sir.
So this is something which you did was actually very good. Fine. So this question has got answered.
Right, sir.
Now, there is one question which came up through our interaction with Manisha and Shivani in our previous session which we had. And they said that they felt diffident because they were not exposed to the Balli Patta task. Now, your case was also same. You were also not exposed. And as it has been revealed through the experience you have shared with us, that to start with in the PGT, you were fairly blank. Because you did not know what is happening. It took you some time to understand कि क्या हो रहा है. And then you got a hang of it and then you could start doing it.
Right, sir.
And the situation changed. Exactly the same thing happened when I had gone for SSB. For me, it was also, I made it in first attempt. And ऐसा ही हुआ था शुरू में नहीं पता चला था, वो हल्के हल्के पता चल गया. So I had taken this premise only कि यार GTO को भी तो पता है, इसने देखा ही नहीं है कभी. अभी जब देखना शुरू कर रहा है, इसकी अकल तो ठीक ठाक है, ये समझ गया. So, but it is taking time to settle down in that. Nothing, wrong in that. It is very normal.
Right,
and that was the prime reason why I was not getting into teaching this Balli Patta task in a very deliberate manner for candidates. I say, यार अगर ठीक ठाक अकल होगी तो आदमी कर ही लेगा. Okay, after all, the qualities which are being judged are not your, expertise in Balli Patta to start with only. And that can only come कि आपने ये, आप कोचिंग एकेडमी में गए हो, आपने गांठे मान दिए और सब कुछ वो किया है, तो आप जानते हो, नहीं तो आप नहीं जानोगे. So that was the outlook with which I have been working in No Frills Academy till now. But we now took a decision because this girl said कि After all, not their overall performance, no, their confidence level was inhibited because of this. कि भाई ये तो जानते नहीं है ना, तो उस कॉन्फिडेंस में भी फर्क पड़ता है ना. तो आई फेल्ट कि यार इसका हम कुछ इलाज निकालेंगे. फाइन. तो वी आर थिंकिंग अबाउट दैट. सो आई वांट यू टू शेयर योर व्यूज अबाउट दिस एस्पेक्ट कि यार इसकी इतनी जरूरत है कि नहीं है, नहीं होने से कितना ड्रॉबैक है और हो जाने से कितना फायदा हो जाएगा. प्लीज शेयर योर व्यूज.
Sir, in my opinion, it will help having an idea, as you mentioned, in terms of confidence. However, as I said that, I personally watched a few YouTube videos and some PPTs that were shared on our group. तो वो fair idea मुझे उससे आ गया था सर. But सबका personal reception अलग अलग होता है. So what and the other side to this is not going with a physical practice. It would work negatively on your confidence if you take it that way. But my opinion on this is you do not have to be the only one giving ideas. You can be the observer as well. And once you observe, you will start realizing how the three things work. And it may take time, but if you observe, you will also be able to give ideas. And worst case scenario, if you are not able to give ideas, you can be an effective team member in helping carry the equipment, helping fix it, helping tie it, and being the dummy to cross the obstacles. So there are a lot of avenues for you to participate, and it's not that you are the only person who has to give ideas. And mentioning what we can do as NFA is that sir, जो हम personally videos देखते हैं, वो हम weekly schedule में we can add it in our NFA group activity. We can have doubt clearing sessions with the coordinators. If there are any repeaters who are coordinators, they can give their own personal experiences. The freshers can ask doubts, and they can give their understanding of how the Balli Fatta Rassi works. So I think that would give more confidence to the freshers who are going for the Rassi.
First class, first class. I got your answer. I think it is worth incorporating. I'm sure Yogita is attending as also group coordinator. We'll see what we can do about it, and we will do it. After all, एक problem आ गई है, उसको हम analyze करेंगे, and like I have no hesitation in asking my subordinates to give ideas. We will get my idea, and we'll work out a plan. कौन सी ऐसी बड़ी बात है, ठीक है ना? So that is fine. There is nothing else I have to ask you. It is good what you have done and in your first attempt, and primarily it shows because I remember speaking to you for the first time. Since then you have made improvements, and that's very good. Please continue this attitude and continue the attitude of teamwork also, and no hesitation in asking ideas and all that. And you see, what probably happened in your this thing, a lot of questions and all were asked to you. You took up this topic of ये आपका drug और Bollywood वाला, and in ये अग्निपथ वाला, I think my assessment is that you would have gone contrary to the government's line of thinking. Is that right or not?
To some extent, maybe.
वो इसलिए जो था उन्होंने कहा यार ये खतरनाक आदमी है, ये नेहरू जैसा कोई आ तो नहीं रहा, who will openly criticize. So today what has happened is our institutions are getting eroded very badly they are getting eroded, and सब play safe करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. तो play safe करने की कोशिश में जो है सिलेक्शन सिस्टम वालों को भी ये लगता है कि यार इसको हम ले लेंगे बच्चे को, तो फिर ये ज्यादा फ्री और फ्रैंक व्यूज देने वाला हुआ, तो he may have problems as he grows up. वो thought process आ रहा है, because you see how much it is happening in the society today. अभी जुडिशरी क्या बोल रही है कि वो तीस्ता के ऊपर ही प्रोसिक्यूशन वगैरह लगा रहे हैं कि ये जो था ये keeping the pot boiling and all that for इतना सालों के लिए. Whereas in my view, Tista did an excellent job. Or for that matter, Zubair is doing an excellent job, which is hurting the government because government doesn't like truth. तो वो जो है आजकल whistle blowers और सच बोलने वालों का जो है they are getting into minority. So to that extent, they were trying to find out from you कि क्या तेरा outlook है. And I'm sure, not sure, it's very good that overall they have taken a good decision, that they have selected you. Because यार ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की स्ट्रेंथ भी तो इन्हीं से बनती है. जो आप लोग मुंह ही नहीं खोलेंगे, बात ही नहीं बताएंगे, तो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन तो फिर भेड़ चाल में चला जाएगा. It will become a weak organization. An organization doesn't accept dissent, which doesn't accept views, it will not grow. Fine. So that is not just for your benefit, for the benefit of all of you. And once again, कोई मेरा भगवान से कनेक्शन नहीं है, ये मेरे पर्सनल व्यूज हैं. ठीक है ना. बाकी तो जो सरकार के व्यूज से एग्री करते हैं, they can agree with their views के. ठीक है भाई, ट्रेड जैकेटेड व्यूज होना चाहिए जो आरएसएस वालों का होना चाहिए. सैफरन चड्डी वाले ने जो बोल दिया वही बढ़िया व्यू है. I find it laughable. Always, and that's how I have been since the day I went for my SSB in India until now also. तो बाकी तो आपने डिसीजन लेना जिंदगी में कि what kind of attitude you maintain in your life. Now you are open to questions from others. Well done, Palaash. All the best.